Hello and welcome. Thank you for listening. My name is Sarah Baumert. I'm a yoga teacher, Feldenkrais practitioner, and host of the Sarah B. Yoga podcast. The Sarah B. Yoga podcast and my practice, Body Matter, is an interdisciplinary learning space where we explore the many ways that movement can help facilitate body acceptance and awareness, reduce pain and stress, regulate the nervous system, and build strength and ease. My teaching plays with the synthesis of Feldenkrais Awareness Through Movement lessons, traditional yoga asana, creative imagery, breathing exercises, self-massage, and a compassionate mindset to help you feel a greater sense of ease and comfort in yourself. Sarah B. Yoga and Body Matter have a lot of other program offerings. These podcasts are just a taste of my teaching. Each week I teach a range of online classes, including a gentle yoga class, a level 2 class for more advanced students, and Feldenkrais classes with monthly themes, anatomy lessons, and Q&A sessions for more in-depth study. I have 2 new online series offerings for the fall. A Feldenkrais series titled Coming to Your Senses, an exploration of the spaces of the eyes, the mouth, jaw, ears, vocal and breathing apparatus. And my second course, Wakeful Body, the blending of yoga and Feldenkrais on Monday nights. As one student recently described Monday nights, that felt like I just gave myself a massage. So these fall classes will be a continuation of some fan favorite stretching sequences that incorporate bolsters and other props to enhance the poses. There is still plenty of time to join these courses live or via the course recordings. You can find more information about these offerings in the show notes. Okay, on to today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hello, and welcome to the Sarah B. Yoga podcasts. This podcast is an intersection of my yoga teaching and my training in the Feldenkrais method. These classes are a mixture of yoga, Feldenkrais awareness through movement, self-massage, breathing exercises, movement puzzles, and a compassionate mindset to help you feel a greater sense of ease and comfort in yourself. Today's class is a 60-minute Feldenkrais Awareness Through Movement lesson. It is an example of a more traditional Feldenkrais lesson. So if you're newer to the Feldenkrais method, you can find a link to guidelines for practicing this method in the show notes, and I highly recommend that you read through them. Please approach this class with ease. It is a little different from my traditional yoga classes where you're arriving in an asana, you're looking for the stretch, you're staying there. Instead, we're doing generally smaller movements, and you'll do the movement and then return to the starting position and repeat that movement multiple times. The repetitions are for you to feel and sense how you're doing the movement. The repetitions aren't to build fatigue or for building muscle. They are to help you learn how you're doing something. So if you like this class or are curious about this class, there is more where it comes from. It is the intro to my self-paced course called Your Creative Coordinated Spine. A strong, supple spine is very essential to a healthy body. It is the centerpiece of skeletal movement, and without a healthy spine, everyday tasks like standing, sitting comfortably, picking up objects, walking, twisting, these can all become really difficult and even painful. So we will look at some of those things and get very curious about the spine in this course. So if you're looking for that or any other live online classes or self-paced courses that may include video, you can find more of those over at my website, body-matter.com. Okay, let's get started with this class. Okay, so one thing about today's lesson, we are going to use a blanket or a towel that you'll just create either a roll or a small lift that we'll put under the pelvis and then eventually under the lower back. So, if you have a yoga blanket, you can make a little roll, and it's fine if it flattens out. It's like a little pad. Just remember to take care of yourself, to move slowly, to if the directions are confusing, just pause and listen again. I often will be describing the directions or the cues many times and in different ways. So you can always just pause if you feel a little bit lost. Okay, so let's begin the lesson. Go ahead and lie on your back. So this is actually a really interesting moment. Notice what is most comfortable for yourself, your whole self, but also your spine, your back muscles. When you're lying, do you prefer to lie with your knees bent, or do you prefer to lie with your legs long? And just knowing that about yourself. So if it is comfortable to lie with your legs long, I'll suggest that. And if it's not comfortable, then just bend your knees, stand your feet. And notice which parts of yourself meet the floor. We are building up a habit of returning to the inner body, of creating space. And there's plenty of room in there, in the body. Right now, you get to use whatever information you have, whatever knowledge you have, whatever is showing up in your imagination and your sensation. So cultivate an image of a central line of your spine from your tailbone to the back of your head. And feel how the back of your spine relates to the floor. Places that touch, the places that don't touch. If you're finding that it's hard to sense your tailbone or your sacrum right now, that's okay. It's a part of the process. And so from your tail and your sacrum, can you gradually move up your spine into the lumbar area, the lower back area? And here, feeling what areas touch the floor or not. What parts of your waist or your lower back are away from the floor? And if they are away from the floor, how much space is there? What could fit there? And compare the two sides. Is there more space underneath one side? Is there more comfort on one side? And again, there may be some areas that are harder to feel, which is no problem, but note that. And then continue your attention up the spine, feeling where our ribs begin to connect the spine. You might feel that the spine comes deeper into the floor. What ribs are you aware of? Can you feel, see, or imagine the connection of your ribs to your spine? So this area of the spine that is between your shoulder blades is where there are ribs that connect. And then you can just continue up from there towards your neck and feel at what point does your spine curve in such an arc that the spine leaves the floor. So this area of the back of your neck. And then the spine continues up into your skull. And if you can just sense the area directly behind your eyes, that's around the area where the topmost part of your spine is. So if you go straight, move your eyes, attention straight back from your eyes, and then just slowly start to roll your head a little in one direction and the other. Yeah, and so slow is really interesting. It can be quite objective. So you can start with what slow was at first and for you, and then slow it down a little more. And this rolling doesn't have to be too big. You're not going to your end range. So it's this sweet zone of carrying your head side to side in a way that you can start to notice the differences. And this movement of the uppermost part of the spine, very subtle, it can be quite quiet. Can you feel how this movement of your head connects down the line of your spine towards your pelvis? That might be really abstract, that idea that this subtle rolling of the head would have an effect that far down on your spine. You know, how does your skin sense the movement? How does the deeper level of the musculature along the spine feel? And even deeper still, the bones. So when you hear the word spine, do you think bone? Do you feel bone, or do you feel more of this, muscular kind of tissue? Okay, and then just let that pause and feel for a moment the two shoulder blades, noticing, does one lie differently? If it does one feel more contact or pressure? And from the shoulders down, the arms to the hand, perhaps one arm lies more restfully than the other. Great. Be for a moment with your breathing, with the motion of your breath. Yeah, giving yourself time. There's no sense of rush as you breathe in and out. Good. And now bend your knees and stand your feet. Stand so that your feet are shoulder distance or a little bit wider. If you've ever watched a baby do something like lie on their back and stand their feet, you probably would never see them bring their feet all the way together. So you can kind of think of how a baby would lie on its back and then stand the feet. So very gently begin to tilt your right knee inward, or tilt your right knee to the left. It's as if you want to move your right knee towards the left foot. So you tilt it inward and then you bring it back to where it began. And, pause and then try the movement again. So slowly repeating that. That's right. And it's mostly just the right leg and the right knee that are moving. Your left knee is staying quite quiet. It might tilt a very small amount, but more or less keeping the left knee pointed to the ceiling. And as you tilt the right knee inward, we'll begin to look for this sense of elongating the thigh, not straightening your right knee, but the sense that your right thigh bone could move a little bit longer in the direction of your knee or a little away from your chest. Yeah, that's right. Everybody try taking your feet just a tiny bit wider. That could be an inch or so. And again, tilt the right knee inward so that your right knee is moving in the direction of your left foot. That's right. And then it comes back. And notice as you do this what you feel in the lower back. What do you feel on the right side? So how the back on the right side comes away from the floor when the knee tilts inward. Notice where on your back there's more of a pressure increase. And also notice what happens when you return the knee. When you return the knee to its beginning position. Good. And pause and just begin to do this same thing with the left knee. So tilting your left knee inward. And as the knee tilts inward, perhaps you can feel that the thigh lengthens a little bit. So there's a sense that you're moving your left knee towards your right foot. That's right. And you return. Noticing what you feel in the lower back on the left side. Does it arch? Does it round? When you tilt the knee, the left knee inward, is the left side of the low back, is it lifting away from the floor? How does your lower back respond to this simple, quiet tilting of the knee inward? Yeah, and sense your breathing as you do this. Is there any correlation with your breath? Are you inhaling or exhaling in a specific way or timing? Good. And let your head be lying so it's not pressing. The head is not pressing back into the floor. So this way, if there's any impulse that comes to the head to roll or to move, then it would be available. So try just one more time, tilting the left knee and feeling if your head is available to respond to that movement. Great. Okay, leave that alone and just rest. You can take your legs along. And notice your face, mouth, keeping the jaw soft. Coming back to the sensation of your back on the floor. Good. And again, bend your knees and stand your feet. Bring your right arm overhead on the floor. So the right palm will face up and your right arm is somewhere above the shoulder, someplace that's comfortable. Yeah, so the arm doesn't have to be right next to the ear at all. And the elbow is more or less straight. If you need some bend in that arm, that's okay. So again, you find some place that's comfortable. And begin to tilt your right knee inward. So you can think about your right knee moving towards the left foot as if your right thigh bone is moving away from your head. That's right. And as the knee tilts inward, feel how the left side of you starts to take some weight, how the lower back changes shape. And notice what happens to the right shoulder blade when the knee tilts. Now, what happens when the knee tilts and what happens when the knee comes back to its original position? What's happening in your right shoulder blade? That's right. So you might notice that when the knee tilts, it lengthens somehow through the spine. Maybe the right arm has that sense that it's getting pulled down with the tilting knee. And then when the knee comes back to the ceiling, the arm lengthens out again. Just see if that feels congruent with what you're feeling. Good. Now, with every movement of the knee inward, can you let the head gently roll to the right? Notice how the distance between the right ear and the right shoulder changes when you roll the head to the right. And then when the knee comes back to its beginning place, the head comes back to the center. So you're tilting the right knee inward as the head rolls to the right. And just notice, does this make it harder? Does it make it easier, smoother, just different? The two ends of your spine, in a pretty subtle way, are turning opposite of one another as you're taking your head to the right. Good. And now continue tilting the right knee inward, but roll your head to the left as your knee tilts inward. And notice if this makes something more or less comfortable. Breathing is smooth. You're letting the air come in and out easily. So a few times tilt the right knee and roll the head to the left, and then a few times tilt the right knee and roll the head to the right. It's this way of comparing and including your right shoulder and the comfort of your right arm in the way that you're observing. Great. And let that rest. Take your legs down. You can take your right arm down. Sensing the two sides. If you think about the line of your spine as the central line, you can compare what's the sensation to the right of the spine to what's the sensation to the left of the spine. Good. Bend your knees again. Again, playing with this positioning of the feet as being a little wider than your shoulders. And take your left arm overhead, above on the floor, so there's no strain in your shoulder. And begin to take your left knee inward. As the knee inward, that same moment that your knee moves inward, imagine that someone has your knee and they gently lengthen the left knee away from your head, as if the left knee is moving in the direction of the right foot. That's right. Noticing the lower back on the two sides, the ribs on the two sides. Noticing the space between your left ear and your left shoulder, and what happens to that space when you roll your head to the left. So as you tilt your left knee inward, let your head roll to the left. Yeah, and notice, can your left shoulder kind of hang back into the floor? You really feel the support of the floor when you roll the head to the left. Good. Continue to tilt the left knee inward and feel what happens as you roll the head to the right. And see if you can tell which way of rolling the head is more pleasant for you, for your whole self. As the left knee tilts inward, compare rolling the head one way and the other, and maybe they feel the same, and that's also just something to note. Great. Let that go. Let it all go and rest. Bring your left arm down. And just notice, is there more or less room between the lower back and the floor? Does either shoulder lie more restfully or easily? And bend your knees again. Stand your feet a little wider than your shoulder distance. And bring both arms to lie overhead. And softly begin to alternate, bringing one knee inward towards its opposite foot and the other knee inward. And as the knee tilts inward, it's as if that thigh lengthens, to reach away from your head. So that the lengthening of the thigh creates some kind of a pull or a length into your spine. So doing it softly so that you can feel how you come back to the floor, how you return. Doing it softly so you don't have to hold your breath. That's right. And noticing here, so the knee that's tilting inward is doing most of the action in terms of the legs. The other knee is staying not rigid, not held, but it's tilting much less than the other knee. That's right. And as you do this, does one arm, as you tilt one knee inward, does one arm feel like it gets pulled, or does one arm lengthen? What happens to your head? Is there any sense of the head receiving information to move? Does one arm stay longer and one arm shorter? So try to get that sense of that. Look for, as you tilt one knee, is one arm getting longer and the other shorter? And which arm is that? Right, so when the knee pulls down a little bit, it's not just moving the spine, but it's also pulling on an arm. Can you feel that? Yeah, great. Let that rest. And take your legs long and your arms down again. You're just feeling if there are any changes that are obvious as you rest. Something different from the moment when we began. Anything different with your breathing. Bend your knees again, stand your feet. And I've been having you take your feet a little wider than shoulders, but now bring your feet so they're more hips distance or so. And from there, cross your right leg over your left. So your right thigh crosses over your left. So yeah, that's right. So instead of the ankle being on the thigh, your right thigh moves over. Your right lower leg can just hang. And bring your left arm above your head on the floor. And slowly let your knees tilt to the right. It doesn't have to be a big movement. And then you bring your knees back to center. And again, you can really pause and feel that process of settling before you begin the movement again. And as you tilt your knees, does your left arm get shorter or does it get longer? And as you tilt your knees, can you sense what's happening in your lower back, especially on the left side? And could you somehow imagine that you lengthen or begin to lengthen the left arm as your legs tilt to the right? So you get long in both directions. The very moment that the knees tilt to the right, you begin to think of the left arm lengthening. Can those two actions begin together? And again, you're just tilting the knees to a degree that's fully comfortable for your back, for your hip. That's right. Are you breathing in any particular way as you tilt your knees? Good. As you come back to the center, keep your legs crossed, but switch your arm. So your right arm is up and your left arm is down. Continue to tilt your knees to the right and feel what happens to the lower back now. And can you lengthen your right arm now as you tilt the knees to the right? Noticing, do you find that easier than lengthening the left when we were lengthening the left arm? So even before you begin the movement, you think about the knees tilting and the right arm lengthening, that you time that together. Great. If your head is rolling, noticing which way you're rolling the head. Good. Let that rest. Uncross your legs. Bring your right arm down. So what was your awareness of your abdomen as you were doing that? Just kind of ask yourself that question for a moment. So often, I think when most people think of the spine, they think of the bony parts of the back of the spine that we have a little bit more tactile access to. And of course, our spine has a front to it also. It's just a little bit harder for us to feel. In front of your lower back is your your belly organs, digestive organs, your belly muscles, and also a lot of potential for movement that comes from your breathing. So bend your knees for a moment again before we go to the second side. Take a breath in, a movement of your breath so that when you breathe in, your diaphragm moves downward and you feel an expansion in your abdomen. Belly breath. And exhale when you need to and let that soften. And slowly begin to coordinate expanding your belly with arching your lower back slightly, or tipping your pelvis in such a way that your lower back moves a little bit away from the floor. Get just what feels good. And when you exhale, you release both the movement of the pelvis and the breath moves out. So you breathe in, a belly breath. You tip the pelvis. And feeling as you breathe in that your pubic bone is moving away from your head. And I actually encourage you right now to bring one or both hands to actually feel your pubic bone in the front. And as you breathe in, the pubic bone slides away from the head, and feel the shape of your low back, that changing shape, the lower back coming away from the floor. Again, just what's comfortable. Great. Okay, let the arms come down and cross your left leg over your right. Bring your right arm up on the floor. And just begin to think of tilting your knees to the left. As you think, imagine the tilting of the knees to the left. Do you notice how the right knee is lengthened by the weight of the left leg? This is just in your imagination. And then simultaneously, begin to tilt the knees as you lengthen the right arm. So you think of lengthening the right arm upward as the knees tilt. And then when you bring yourself back, notice how you come back. The knees tilt to the left. As the knees tilt to the left, the right arm gets a little longer. And now bringing in the breathing. So when the knees tilt to the left, breathe in. And think of your pubic bone moving away from your head like it just was as your knees tilt. And noticing what happens as you return. Again, the knees do not need to go very far. Good. And just simply change the arms. Bring your left arm overhead. Continue to tilt the knees to the left. Can you coordinate the knees tilting to the left and a lengthening of the left arm, the whole left side? That's right. And the head is not fixed. It can roll, and you can experiment with what direction would be easier to roll the head. And you can continue, if you're tilting the knees in a very small way, please continue that. Can you imagine that this movement would take you to roll all the way onto your left side in a very controlled way. You don't fall onto your left side. You're not using the momentum or dropping of the knees. Yeah, and if you're starting to play with that, then your puzzle is that you return. Everything you do is reversible. Good. Just take a moment to let that rest. Uncross your legs. Take your legs long. Again, notice if some parts of your back are closer to the floor or farther away. Okay, now bend your knees, stand your feet, and grab your blanket roll or your folded blanket. And bring your blanket roll, place it underneath the upper part of your pelvis. So it'll be across the pelvis. So the blanket, it can be gently rolled up or kind of folded. And we'll start with it more under the pelvis. Less under the lower back. We'll eventually bring it under the lower back. And, you want to find a kind of a sweet spot again, make sure it's comfortable. And if for some reason this blanket roll is not working for you, you don't need to use it. You just take it out. And stand your feet again. Have your feet a little wider than your shoulders. Remember the action we just did of gently arching the back and feeling the pubic bone move away from the head. Do that here for a moment. So take a breath in and take your pubic bone away from your head and feel the pelvis rolling as if the sitting bones would come to the floor, and they might. And the roller might be part on pelvis and part on lower back, and so you might be kind of curving around the roller, and then you return and just feel what this new terrain of having the roller there, what it does to your sensation of your sacrum, your tail, and the lowest part of the lumbar, and this kind of arching, this extending of the back. Our lumbar curve is so important for us to be able to be upright. And due to a lot of sitting that many of us do, our lumbar curve, many humans, their lumbar curve is non-existent. So there's a very strong case for keeping a lumbar curve. So we're bringing a little awareness to that today. Okay, let that soften, let that rest. Take your right arm overhead on the floor, as we've been doing, and begin to tilt your right knee inward. So you tilt the right knee inward and think as if somebody had their hand on your right knee and they gently pulled your thigh a little away from your head. And then you return. And when the right knee tilts inward, it's moving in the direction of the left foot. Allow your back to arch. So you reach through the right thigh, allowing the back to arch, and the right side of the lower back might come off your roller, or the pelvis might come off the roller a little bit. Great. And pause and just bring your right arm down. Take your left arm overhead. So both feet are standing. Slowly begin to tilt your left knee inward, as if your left knee wants to touch your right foot. Feel the pubic bone moving away from the head as the knee tilts, allowing your back to arch. And using the very malleable abdomen, the malleability of your diaphragm and your breath. Yeah, and since we've done this movement many times now, just play with having your feet even wider, a few of you. And see if that creates a new sensation through the spine. Maybe a different kind of space for your knee to move in that direction of its opposite foot. Great. And then pause. And take both arms overhead now. So your right arm and your left arm are overhead. And begin to alternate. So you tilt one knee inward and reach through that leg. And then the other. And noticing as you do this, the arching that starts to happen in the lower back, tracking your pubic bone. Each time the knee tilts inward, you reach the pubic bone away from your nose. Noticing which arm gets longer or shorter. Okay, let that rest. Take the blanket out, but keep it close by. Just rest for a moment. Lengthen your legs and note if the contact with the floor is different now after having that blanket underneath you. Things to note. Did you like that? Is it more comfortable now? Is it less comfortable now? Right? What are you learning about yourself? The movement was, for Feldenkrais, the movement itself was trivial. It was not so important. What was important was what you learn about yourself via the movement. Okay, so bend your knees again, stand your feet, and take the blanket. Instead of having it under your pelvis, bring it a little higher up so it's underneath your lower back. And if that feels inappropriate, uncomfortable, bring it back so it's more underneath your pelvis. And we'll just be here for a moment. Take both arms overhead. Stand your feet about shoulder distance. And tilt one knee inward, alternate tilting one knee and then the other knee. And just feel, it's almost like the blanket roll is just giving you a little advice about how the lower back can move, how you can soften into this extension or arch of the lumbar. That's right. And we're using the tilting of the knee and the elongating of the thigh to start to sense how the spine can get a little longer. Great. Okay, let that go. Carefully slide the blanket out from underneath you and just go ahead and roll to your side. Come up to sit. So you're going to sit with your feet on the floor in front of you, and your knees will be to the ceiling. You can have your hands somewhere behind you, so you can lean a little bit of weight on your hands. Yeah, so the knees are bent. The soles of the feet are on the floor. That's right. And so think about the distance of your feet, just like we've been doing when we've been on our back. So you can have your feet a little wider than your shoulders. That's right. So with the feet spread like this, take one knee inward and you direct it towards the opposite foot. And then come back and then alternate, tilting the other knee inward. That's right. You can roll on the edge of the foot. The pelvis can roll. And you're looking for this sense. It's not so much that how far can the knee tilt in, but can that thigh bone reach a little bit away from your belly or away from your head? And what about the head here? So is it easier to turn the head so that the nose goes opposite of the knee that's tilting inward? Right, so that chin would come towards its shoulder. Or is it easier to take the head in the direction that the knee is tilting? Whatever direction of turning the head is easier, can you stay with that? Good. And just make the movement a little bit quicker, which means it needs to be smaller. It gets a little faster and a little smaller. That's right. And the head is turning whatever direction feels easiest. And just because the movement is a little quicker doesn't mean you hold your breath. Great. Let that go. Rest on your back. Notice how the legs feel now. Your meeting of the floor. It's the overall sense of your whole self. Good. And bend your knees and stand your feet. And cross your left leg over your right. And then bring your left arm overhead on the floor, so somewhere comfortable. And just take your right arm and just kind of cross your right arm across the body in a very relaxed way, just so that the weight of the arm is not on the floor, but it's resting on you somehow. Begin to tilt your knees to the left, and as you do that, lengthen your left arm, and think about this idea of rolling onto your left side, whether you're getting there or not. And then you always return, you always reverse, you can reverse whatever you're doing just as you're doing it. So if you went all the way to the left side and you go, I don't know how to come back, that's what we're going to play with a little bit more in detail in the next couple weeks. So you're tilting the knees. The left arm is lengthening. And as you do that, can you move your pubic bone away from your nose? So it's this sense of the front of you gets longer as you tilt the knees to the left. That's right. Go ahead and roll your head to the left as the knees tilt to the left. And as the knees tilt to the left and the left arm lengthens, the head's rolling to the left. And then just start to think about that left hand with your eyes. If you begin to look with your eyes up towards that left hand, just notice when you start that. That's right. And then the knees come back to the center and your head comes back to the center. Great. So everybody, find a way to come onto your left side with your legs still crossed. You're lying on your left side. Your left arm is somewhere on the floor. Your right hand can be on the floor in front of you. So now just take a movement of taking the belly forward as your head moves back. So think of moving your belly forward or arching your lower back as your head goes back, and then let that release and just come back to your beginning place. And just do that, maybe 1 or 2 more times. You're staying on your side. Great. Okay. We'll see if you can come onto your back. You can uncross your legs if you'd like to come onto your back and just let that rest. Okay, bend your knees, stand your feet, and just roll to your right side. So without your legs crossed, just come to your right side. We won't be there long, so you don't need a pad under your head. Your left hand can be there in front of you. So very slowly start to take your tailbone back towards the space behind you. When your tailbone goes back, the belly comes forward. And then let that go. And the tailbone goes back and the belly comes forward. That's right. And allowing that movement to include your whole spine so that as the tailbone goes back, your chin moves a little bit away from your chest. And the back of the head goes backward. The head does not roll. That's right. The back of the head goes backward. That's right. So just remember this in a moment. Okay, come back onto your back. And cross your right leg over your left and bring your right arm overhead on the floor. And just have your left arm kind of across the body, resting on the body. As you tilt your knees to the right, begin to lengthen your right arm. And it's almost as if that whole right side, you're preparing to roll onto that right side. So you're meeting the floor with the right side. Some of you might get there, or maybe you just go partly. And there's a way that we can coordinate the spine so that this rolling to the right and rolling back onto our back is possible in a smooth way. And so this extension or this back bending is a part of that. So as you're beginning to tilt the knees, can you think of taking your belly forward? And the head can move back. That's right. So making sure it's your right thigh crossed over your left. Good. So can you slowly, gingerly roll all the way to your right side, keeping your legs crossed? And your left hand can come to the floor right in front of you. Now just thinking about moving the spine here. So you take your tailbone back, your chin comes away from your chest, and then you let that go. And just try it a few times. Take your tailbone back and your chin comes away from your chest. As your tailbone moves back, your belly comes forward. Great. Okay, now roll back onto your back. Use your arms if you need to, and keep your right leg crossed over your left. This will be a little foreshadow for next week. So your right arm will stay there. Bring your left arm vertical towards the ceiling. So imagine this first. Don't do it yet. Imagine you're rolling to your right side, and as you roll to your right side, your straight left arm moves toward your right arm so that your left palm and your left palm comes to your right palm. So imagine the trajectory of that, of your left hand. That's right. And so slowly start to tilt your knees to the right. As you do it, slide your pubic bone away from your belly and bring your left palm towards your right palm. Maybe you watch the hand, and there you are in your back bend. Now, can you reverse all of that? Which means you have to bring your back to the floor. Yeah, try it again, maybe once or twice. It might not be as smooth as you want it to be yet, but there's time. We have time. Great. Come back onto your back and just let your legs come down. Take your arms down. Notice your breathing. Were you breathing just now? And feeling how your spine lies now, if there's more space between the floor and the lower back. Good. And bend your knees and stand your feet. And so if you do feel any strain in the lower back, just interlace your fingers behind your head and lift your feet so that your knees are coming towards your chest in an easy way. Yeah, your feet can just hang. That's right. And just very gently lift your head, and as you lift your head, bring your knees and your elbows towards one another. It doesn't have to be a big movement. It can be very small. And then you bring your elbows and your knees a little away from one another. Just very easy, not straining. Just giving your spine the opposite action for a moment. Great, and let that go. Bring your arms and your legs down. And again, just feel the distribution of yourself. Feel if it lies more comfortably now. Great. Go ahead and roll to one side and bring yourself up to stand. And as you come up to stand, just notice, how do the legs feel under the pelvis? Feel the curves of your spine. What's the sense of how tall you are? Do the arms hang differently? Good. Go ahead and take a walk about your space, see what walking feels like. If you enjoyed this lesson, please consider leaving a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, or even make a donation. You can find a link to make a donation in the show notes. Any small offering helps with the time and resources to keep these podcasts coming. Thank you so much, and I hope we meet again sometime soon on your mat. Are you enjoying this podcast? I've chosen to offer these audio recordings freely for over 15 years. I do this because research shows yoga, yoga nidra, and Feldenkrais to be valuable practices, those which I would like to share widely. Dana, the Buddhist practice of generosity, has always been a pillar of my business. And more generally, Dana is the inclination to give without expecting any form of repayment. It does, however, take a fair amount of time, effort, and cost to maintain and keep the podcasts available. If you feel you've benefited from what you've learned from these classes, then please do consider making a contribution towards the maintenance and upkeep of the classes. It will help ensure that I can continue to offer the podcast classes freely and keep generating new material. Give what you can, give what feels good. If it's too little, it won't feel good. If it's too much, it won't feel good. Links to support the show monetarily can be found in the show notes. And other ways to give include sharing the podcast with others, leaving a 5-star rating and review, or just sending me an email with how the classes have affected you. Thanks so much.